Good morning, everyone, and it's so good to see all of you here. It's been a very early Saturday morning, 8 a.m. We really appreciate your interest in exploring the virtual delivery of IPE. The title of our session, as you can see on this slide, is Virtualizing Interprofessional Learning, Utilizing an Online Escape Room to Convey Team Communication Strategies and Practitioner Resilience. My name is Veronica Young, and I'm the director of the UT Austin Center for Health IPE. And my colleagues will now introduce themselves. And I'm going to switch it over to Dee first.
Hi, and welcome. We're so glad to have you with us this morning. My name is Dee Sparks. I'm the Assistant Dean for Health Affairs and a Clinical Associate Professor in the Steve Hicks School of Social Work. Dan?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dan Richards. I'm a pediatric physician, and I'm an associate professor and associate chair for academic affairs in the Department of Pediatrics at Dell Medical School.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Roberts. I'm a student, third-year pharmacy student and a teaching assistant for this class.
And to my colleagues, do you see our fourth speaker present yet? Okay. We would also like to acknowledge the team of course directors from medicine, nursing, pharmacy, and social work. And I know, Barbara, you're in the audience because it's this entire team that is instrumental to the success of our foundation course. We have 3 learning objectives for this small group discussion session today. We will be sharing how we redesigned an in-person IP module for virtual delivery. We're going to then transition to describing very quickly about why team steps and also why we integrated practitioner resilience into an IPE module. And we're going to learn from each other and provide us an opportunity to share lessons learned and also identify strategies to reevaluate how we offer IPE. We will do this by beginning with a short description of our foundation's curriculum, followed by a description of the module. We will then engage everybody in an activity in a breakout room and then end with a discussion and Q&A. So very briefly, an overview of the course description of our entire, we call it FICP, which stands for Foundations for Interprofessional Collaborative Practice. More details about this course and about the embedding of the socialization pedagogy can also be found on an on-demand lecture from the UT Innovation Shine Conference, and a QR code is on the bottom right corner for you if you're interested. So this particular foundations course currently involves learners from medicine, nursing, pharmacy, and social work. As you can see in the middle in the gray box, it actually occurs over 2 semesters with 6 sessions each semester. Prior to the pandemic, they were 3-hour sessions. The content in the fall semesters focuses on the IPEC core competencies, and in the spring semesters, we bring in more of the clinical scenarios for our learners. We also embedded 1 capstone experience per semester. The fall semester is a community PSA, and followed by in the spring semester, a team simulation. This particular module that we're going to focus on today is on interprofessional communication, which, as you can see, is one of the core competencies from IPEC. This particular infographic highlights the key components change from before the pandemic to during the pandemic. And I'm going to start over on the left side. You can see that we actually reduced the length of the session from our usual 3-hour session to 2-hour virtual synchronous. At that time, we were very concerned about our learners experiencing Zoom fatigue. This course also happens on Friday afternoons from 2 to 5. We also decided very strategically to move the implicit bias content of the former interprofessional communications module because we recognize it is very important for implicit bias, especially during the pandemic, to be a standalone module. And we swapped that out with practitioner resilience, which my colleague Dee Sparks is going to address in just a little bit. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan to describe why team steps.
Thanks, Veronica, for the introduction. So I'd like to just take a couple minutes to talk about where we were when the pandemic hit and how we were teaching this communications module. When we designed it originally, we wanted it to incorporate some introduction to communication skills strategies for teams. And team steps, many of you will be familiar with, is an evidence-based communication model. And so we wanted to introduce some basic team steps concepts and allow the teams to have a chance to utilize these concepts, practice them in a team activity. So we adapted an exercise from the University of Washington, which involves a tower building exercise. And it's actually a multiple iteration exercise. And again, the idea was to give them a team building exercise while utilizing communication strategies. So our challenge in the virtual world was, how do we get the same kind of interactive activity? How do we keep the socialization, the communication skills, and the team building pieces of an activity when everybody's in a different space? And so I will turn it over to Suzanne because she helped us develop a way of moving this from a physical team-based activity to a virtual space. So sorry, Dee Dee. So sorry. You know, I think to transition, before we give Suzanne the opportunity to talk about how we moved the physical exercise to the virtual space, Veronica mentioned that we added this idea of team-based practitioner resilience. And if any of you attended the keynote addresses yesterday, Dr. McMahon from the ACCME talked about teaming and some of the benefits of teaming. And I think Dee Dee can speak to how that fits into this exercise.
Dee Dee, you're muted.
Resilience is the ability to successfully adapt to continued stressors. We are educating and preparing students to spend their entire career bearing witness to the suffering of others. Naomi Remen told us that the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk on water without getting wet. It's vital in interprofessional health education to give students the tools they need to build and to sustain personal and professional resilience in order to reduce opportunities for burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary trauma, and vicarious trauma. We use the supportive environment of the classroom to frame adversity as a challenge and not a threat. Teaching effective communication and collaboration skills and using role play and simulations as opportunities to practice those skills increases confidence, strengthens teamwork, provides students with a greater understanding of the roles and responsibilities of their colleagues. Conflict is seen as an opportunity for positive team growth. Interprofessional collaborative practice reduces individual burden of care and increases personal and professional well-being. We recognize the importance of incorporating skills that build practitioner resilience early in medical education so that our students become good stewards of the trauma they witness in their professional lives. Next slide, please. Team steps provide strategies and tools to reduce burnout at the organizational level as well as the personal level. Burnout affects quality of care. Strong interprofessional communication and collaboration improves quality of care, supports meaningful relationships, reduces medical errors, and increases patient, caregiver, and practitioner satisfaction. As I said before, resilience is a person's ability to successfully cope and function in spite of regular exposure to stress and adversity. The interpersonal aspects of resilience and teamwork are closely linked. Increased resilience has a positive effect on team interactions, which in turn helps to improve resilience in teams and in individual practitioners. And I'm going to pass it back over to Veronica.
now it's my turn to be muted. So thanks so much, Dan and Didi. Before I transition to Suzanne, who's going to go over the online escape room, I'd like to share with you the structure of this particular module, which is pretty standard for most of our FICP modules. So we begin the session with all learners together in one Zoom room, and we went over the team steps and practitioner resilience concepts to prime them for the 2 subsequent activities. And as you can see here, we structured for each activity. We begin with the online escape room, followed immediately by a team debrief and a large group debrief. And during the large group debrief, which were led by Didi and Dan, so that was very instrumental to help them apply the concepts and to really together reflect immediately on what were used. This is then followed by the large group discussion, where we invite our faculty facilitators as well as our learners to share the real world applications of team steps and practitioner resilience. And then finally, we end the module with team discussions. So the students go back into their interprofessional teams, where it's facilitated by faculty facilitators. And then they also end with a reflection on the lessons learned. And with this, I am going to transition to Suzanne. Again, Suzanne is a 3rd-year pharmacy student, but also one of 3 teaching assistants for the foundations course. Suzanne is also instrumental in developing the online escape room for this particular module. So Suzanne, it's all yours.
Thank you for that introduction. Just making sure I wasn't muted. So from a student's perspective, it can be very hard to socialize in a virtual environment, especially when you can't just sit in between lectures and chat with those around you, especially for a class where you have students from different colleges who probably have never met before this class. So we wanted to design a team building activity that was kind of felt more fun than it did like a quiz. So that's why we went with the theme of pop culture. It was intentionally designed just to create a social environment while allowing the students to apply team steps and practice resilience rather than a quiz on team steps and a quiz on what they've learned. So that was the idea behind the escape room. And then I think we have a room set up that we'd like for you guys to try out. So just like our students, we're going to allow 5 minutes introductions into the breakout room. We'd like for you to go around the Zoom, call each other out, and just kind of chat for a moment, and then we will start the activity with an announcement. Before starting the activity, we do recommend that you identify a gamekeeper. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat, and the gamekeeper will be the person to open that link, to type in all the responses, and just keep note. So I will give you a hint. So to be successful in this escape room, you may want to take note of your responses. So if you want to assign a note taker, that would be a good idea. So we'll have 5 minutes to try to escape the room, and we'll send out a 1-minute warning through the announcements. I would like you to note where you finished, if you finished it in 4 minutes, or if you were unable to finish, what question number you were on. And we'll go ahead and send you out into the break rooms. Is there any questions before we do those breakout rooms?
So I want to just reiterate what Suzanne just said. She will be keeping you on time by sending and broadcasting announcements. We really encourage you to spend the first 5 minutes to get to know each other, but I would ask people to note when the announcement comes again to start the escape room in the second half of the activity. So first 5 minutes is introductions, second 5 minutes is activity. Suzanne, are you ready to send them out to the breakout rooms?
Yep, I'm opening the rooms now.
Great.
And Dr. Young, did you also want to go into a room or?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So it looks like it's just us here.
I'm staying here with you.
I'm very worried about John. Not that he's not here. I'm just worried.
I just texted him too and said, okay, now we're all worried about you.
I know, I'm just really worried. I feel like I can barely focus. I'm just like, I just hope everything's okay.
Dan, do you know if he's on call or something?
No,
No, I don't.
I mean, yesterday he even started the group text for us. He's been to all the meetings.
Yeah, yesterday he emailing and texting, and I know he was at the keynote speakers, so the conference is on his mind for sure. So I'm not sure where he could be, unless.
I mean, I know I'm okay as long as he and his family, everybody's okay, but.
Right. I would love it for it to just be like he overslept. It seems unlike him, but I would love that to be the answer.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping.
And then he'll just be wildly embarrassed and we'll tease him forever. Yeah. That's what I'm going for here.
We're gonna make him put on the cat filter at the next meeting. Suzanne, are you keeping time? Okay, thanks. Thank goodness you're so used to keeping track of everything.
This is going very well.
Suzanne, I'm so sorry. I thought I knew Dee Dee was after me, but my train of thought went to you and how you helped us convert. So I'm sorry, I messed up the order there.
I don't think anybody really noticed it.
I'm going to do the John thing. John's going to say, it's all good, Dan. Everybody, it's all good. Can you just hear him say that?
He just texted us, I think.
Forgot to send
thank God it was. Let's give him somebody to just say, it's okay. It's okay. We're just relieved. Oh, I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm telling him now we're going to tease you forever.
You can tell him your boss, Barbara Jones, is here and know that he
You tell him.
Oh, shoots. Just a second, everybody. Forgot that this is still recorded.
We are going to wait for the rest of the groups to join us back in the main room.
They should all be in here now.
Here they come. And when the last group makes it, it means we get Dee Dee back too. Well, great. I hope that everybody got to meet somebody new in their breakouts. I hope that everybody enjoyed having early morning activity to get the blood flowing here. And what Dee Dee and I would like to do next is ask you if you're willing and able to consider turning on your camera. I hope that nobody in the session has a problem with using first names, because I think we can use first names if we see you on the screen and we see your name listed. But we'd like to just start with some discussion about what that activity was like as a team member, and start getting your thoughts about the team building exercise in the escape room format virtually. So I guess we could start with what we do with the students is we actually, we have a poll and we ask them, how many teams escaped? How many teams got stuck? How many questions left did you have when you got stuck? And we put a little competition in it, but we just want to get an idea of the breadth of experience. So if anybody's willing to share, how did your team do? How far did you get in the escape room? Where did you struggle? Celebrate successes. Who made it all the way through? Who got a win?
We didn't win, but we got to close to the lock.
Great, Victoria. So you made it a large amount of the way through, but didn't quite have enough time to pull it out.
Great teamwork. Everybody contributed, either by guessing or knowing the answers. So it paid to have variety of people of different age and different, different backgrounds and different sex.
Did anyone resort to Google?
No, we did not go that far. We were just quick on guessing.
We have students who are like, was that okay? Is it okay to use Google? And it's like, use all the tools that you have at your disposal.
There was a temptation.
Anybody from another team brave enough to tell us how far you got?
So I think for my group, I think we did a great job. It was nice to meet a few new people. I think we did a good job at teamwork and coming up with a consensus on answers we weren't sure of. I think the one piece is that we forgot to write down the answers as we were going. So then we got to the point of the lock. So I think that's the part of the directions that we forgot to do. So then it was a question of which answer was 2 and which answer was 3. So
good.
That's where we got stuck, but we tried a few times towards the lock.
Awesome job. You almost made it.
Oh.
I always picture the last minute on that question as being very frantic, like the key's in the hole and we think we got it, but we just can't turn it the right way.
Yes.
Well, very good. Did anybody make it out? Did anybody escape? Any team have success in the 5 minutes that we gave you? Doesn't sound like it.
In class, when we went through this exercise, we actually, in the second room, gave them less time to make it a little bit more nerve-wracking, a little more challenging. What team processes did you find yourself or your team doing?
I think in our team, I was on the same team as Samuel, that we kind of looked at who had what knowledge or declared who didn't. That's when we resorted to Google. We're like, we're out. We have no idea who Rihanna even is, right? So we had to, but looking at different people's backgrounds and then contributions, I think we did that during the introduction, so we knew who to refer to.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we do in class is, again, we do this escape room in an iterative process, similar to how we used to do the tower building exercise. So part of that iteration is there are some rules and some suggestions at how the team functions, but and in the same sense as there being some rules, there are some defined roles, team member roles that are given. But it also requires flexibility in the moment. And so I wonder if you can reflect on, again, when you hit that question and you weren't taking notes, how flexibility or roles changed in the moment. Were there any things that your team did that worked well, that helped you when you struggled?
I'll say for us, I think as a non-clinician, when the bone question came up, I was like, well, the physicians here will for sure know that I'm not even going to try to Google that quickly. So I just kind of sat back and waited for the answer on that one. And then when there was kind of like an idea that no one really knew what Rihanna's real name was, I'm happy to quickly Google that. So I think there were different people who stepped up when needed.
Yeah, so I think that demonstrates a little bit of fluidity in roles, and also the idea that sometimes leadership on a team can change.
And in class, we do an additional escape room after the first one, and we give the students an opportunity to do a pre-brief. So knowing what you know, if you were going into another escape room and your team is going to come together for a very short 45-second pre-brief, what would you do differently this time?
We would make sure somebody writes down our answers in order so we can have that.
Absolutely. You kind of learn to identify what you wish you had done earlier,
Yeah.
and then cover that in your new role. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
So what I found about myself was I didn't even think about Google being one of the tools. I assumed it was I put a restriction on myself that wasn't even there.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for sharing that, Darlene.
Was it fun?
Did y'all have fun?
So,
You know, that was one of the things we got back from students. They enjoyed this activity. It captured something that they're familiar with and we're not expecting in the classroom. So they really had a good time. There was a lot of learning there.
So we wanted to give you a flavor of how we built a virtual team building experience. Some of the things that you didn't see that we do in the class are we do theory bursts. So we teach them and encourage them to use team steps concepts, as I said. So like Dee Dee alluded to, briefs and huddles and debriefs, as well as other communication tools like requests and checkbacks. And so Dee Dee, I wonder also if you can talk about how we talk to the teams and debrief the teams around resilience. What in your team did you do or experience that helps to build resilience in teamwork?
And that's where the communication and collaboration piece comes in. You know, we talk in class and as we do in practice about the burden of care. You know, when one person feels that they are the only person who can contribute to the positive outcome of a patient, then that does increase their burden of care, which increases their ability to be susceptible to stressors and to trauma. And so when we debrief, we talk about communication. You know, how was communication shared? And how did that communication contribute to the team being able to collaborate in order to get answers and move through something that's happening pretty rapidly? And even though it's supposed to be a fun activity, it's in a classroom. It's going to feel like there's some stressors associated with it. And then when you share that burden of care through good communication, through asking each other, I heard Samuel talked about knowing that that someone else's role or responsibilities would cover a particular aspect of the game or an aspect of patient care. And you did not have to feel like you were the only one with those answers. That does increase your ability to address stressors, to cope in a more positive way in a stressful environment. And that's what resilience is about. We are going to, I mean, you are all in this healthcare arena. We all are going to encounter stressors. We're all going to witness suffering and trauma, but it is our ability to share what we are experiencing, to talk with each other, to collaborate on outcomes that increases our professional resilience, which in turn increases our personal resilience. And that is really going to be the foundation for our future healthcare providers. We lose a lot of our physicians, especially our physicians and nurses, to burnout and to compassion fatigue. And that's something that we need to address at the medical education level, not wait till they're in practice.
Dan, may I add something?
Mm-hmm, please.
I want to piggyback off of what Dee Dee just shared. in the overview, where we presented team steps and practitioner resilience, we also highlighted the team steps concepts of mutual support, task assistance. And we have found that practitioner resilience ties in very nicely, dovetails very nicely to mutual support, in terms of that concept. I also want to bring out that initially, when we had our team meetings to redesign this module, we were really going back and forth in terms of the content and the questions that should go into what I call a pretty easy to make, easy because Suzanne built it for us, easy to make online escape room, because we certainly did not have the resources to do like a virtual reality escape room, and it's on a time crunch. So the decision was, do we focus more on content that we presented and see if the students could recall the content, versus should we stick to using this as an opportunity to encourage the students to get to know each other, to socialize while they apply concepts? So I think Dan, Didi, Suzanne, and John, you remember those early conversations. And Suzanne was really instrumental to say that she thinks it should be more fun. And she really felt that the students will get the concepts that we just presented because they are primed to apply the concepts, but it will be done in a fun way, and also reduce the type of stress where what Suzanne mentioned does not feel like a quiz. So we said, okay, let's try it. And I had to laugh when some of you said, and we don't even know some of the people, the names, and I felt the same way. I think we all felt the same way. But when I was in the room with those students and I helped facilitate a team that day, they knew, they are familiar. So I think having on board with your team a student learner, even if it's a teaching assistant that can, that really understands that generation, I think that was really instrumental to the success. You know, for you all, you may be like me looking at like, how is this applicable? How is this gonna work? But boy, when we saw the students do this, they were really excited. They can tell that we heard them and we understood what they're experiencing and that we get them. And so I just wanted to share that piece from our experience.
I'll build on what Veronica contributed. I also think that our faculty were able to help make the connection to practice. So they experienced something very fun. They experienced a lot of the concepts through the escape room. I think our faculty helped make the connection real. How does this apply to their future practice? So I think that there was an opportunity there to slide that in once they were having fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will echo what Veronica said. Suzanne was essential to bringing an understanding of how this activity could translate. And she participated in this course only a couple of years ago in the live in-classroom setting. And she brought her perspective of what worked and how it could translate. And also what Veronica said, in addition to mutual support, one of the things the students point out in terms of team building and resilience is working towards a common goal. And so I think that's a really important part of the team exercise, despite the fun pop culture content that we built in here. So this session was submitted as a small group discussion, and what we're hoping to do is to transition a little bit from our virtual experience to your experience, and hopefully generate some discussion and some questions and some challenges as a group around your work. So,
Dan, Joe has raised his hand.
Excellent.
First, I just wanted to commend you all for great work. It's awesome, and I love the fact that Suzanne was part of the planning process. I'm actually curious, just as we're all sort of dealing with shifting from in-person to online learning, and I may have missed this because I've had internet issues following the storm and I had to reboot my modem. So if this is duplicative, I'm sorry. But I'm curious to know from your planning team's perspective, will you retain this as an online experience once you know, pandemic related meeting restrictions are over? Or will you revert back to in-person, or are you planning to do some kind of blended version in the future?
John, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, because there were a lot of learnings that we have gained as a result of this opportunity. And this was one of the exciting experiences that we had. So the challenge would be, once we get back into person, could we still preserve elements like this and deliver them in an in-person experience? Could we offer a blended experience where some of that is in person? So I think that it's worth seriously considering, because I think that what Suzanne created is really helpful, and it creates a sense of fun in the experience and a sense of urgency and a sense of work. And so I think that it's worthwhile for us to consider. I think what we have to do is to go through all of our learned experience and see what have we missed and what can we still preserve as a result of the opportunity too. So I don't think that we have decided yet, although I think that this is one of the highlights of the experience in the fall semester.
I think too, what we heard from our faculty in the course is that they really enjoyed it too. I think that with all the stressors of moving into an online class very, very rapidly, because this, you know, was done very rapidly last year, I think it was an opportunity to really get creative, to move our expectations of how we teach in the classroom into a whole nother realm. And I think our faculty who've been in the course for several years talked about that quite a bit, that it was something they enjoyed, and that it made them think of different and creative ways to do other things in their own classrooms or individual classrooms.
I was thinking that this would also, I don't know, you could do the lock at the end, but this would be a nice like orientation activity, where you could say like whose parents were in the military, or, you know, who can speak another language or whatever, and a nice way for them to get to know each other. Yeah. Especially virtually, when they don't have that out of classroom, let's talk over a cup of coffee between classes.
Great suggestion.
Anyone else?
I see Kim's hand.
Would like to say to Suzanne, great job for bringing this forward. At Southwestern, UT Southwestern, we've really embraced our students. In fact, we have our student leadership, a group who actually participates with us every year. So we really appreciate your student contributions. Our students came forward before the pandemic, similar. And so we actually were fortunate to have done this in person and then had to transition it online. And so it costs a lot. It's a lot of things that you have to do. And so, but we actually did we call it riddle room in person, and the students liked it as well as the faculty. I think we saw more team building and just like you did to transition it online. So I think going back to Joe, to your point, there were costs and expenses with putting all our boxes together and making the escape rooms and having like real locks. And so I think there are other, and Veronica knows this too, I think Texas Tech has done kind of a combination where they actually had people in person, but again, using your Google Doc that you set up for your escape room. So it could kind of be a hybrid. And I think that's a great idea. But the student voice in all of this is just so important. It's one of the few things, John, to your point, that we got fun, exciting. We like this. It was a great way. And, you know, no one ever gets that. It's great for IPE to get evaluations. I love it. So, but again, the student, I would encourage even more students, because Suzanne, people like you roll off quickly. You know, you're so full of energy. So to make it sustainable, what students you would pass it to would be great. But I think, Joe, we are probably going to go back to some type of hybrid form of that. I don't know what San Antonio's thinking, but I think maybe that we'll see from this.
Well, we were in the middle of planning something similar, in-person small group learning for roughly 1,000 students when the pandemic came, and we had to quickly transition it to online. And we were also very fortunate to have a committee of students who helped us reshape it. But part of me thinks, forever we've been battling with the main barriers to IPE are logistics and schedules and the cost of bringing students together at night. If you're going to bring them together, you feed them, that kind of thing. I don't know. So we're in the middle of debating. Some of our feedback from our students was that they missed being in person. It would have been a better experience if they could be together and connect in that sort of real physical way. So I don't know. We're in the middle of kind of debating. There's definitely a cost benefit discussion that has to weigh in because, by shifting to virtual, thousands of dollars in food, or Kim, you mentioned, I think you were talking about buying physical locks to use. It's a cost benefit analysis that I'm not sure we know the answer to yet. Like, what's the payoff of paying for dinners versus coming together online and or having a physical lock or a virtual lock? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting conversation, but the group at UT Austin, you've really given me a lot to think about. And I appreciate your work and presenting it today.
Thanks, Joe and Kim. I was going to add it's an educational cost benefit too, because I think if we're just analyzing the team building session, I think it's just as popular and just as effective live or virtually. But what do we want to teach our teams about communication in the virtual space? Because this is here to stay. And so I think you have to weigh those things as well.
Well, this conversation is going so well, but it is 8:50 and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I think the one thing I want to leave with all of you, as Kim and Joe already mentioned, is so important to have student input and for them to be part of the planning. If you're ever planning to develop an escape room, whether it's in person or virtual, and it's pop culture, I would say, like, I would not want to embarrass myself. And I would want to make sure that there is a millennial there or whatever generation it's going to be at the table to design that. I'm going to just share my screen really quickly one last time to show you all that if you all have any questions, you can certainly contact us by the email that you see here, healthip@austin.utexas.edu, and we can funnel your questions to any of the presenters here today. We want to thank you at this time again for joining this session and hope the conversation will continue for all of us, and we're all colleagues. I think if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out. This recording will be available on demand an hour after this session. So if you wanted to go back and catch the beginning where we spent about 10 minutes to present the foundations course, and other information is there for you. So have a good day and we'll see you in the other sessions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.